So let's cultivate our motivation. So it's very important during teachings that the person giving the teaching and the people receiving the teachings are on the same page and have the same motivation. If the teacher is teaching with compassion, but the students are listening because they want to learn something so they can become teachers themselves, or because they're seeking their own liberation, that won't do. Or even if the students have bodhicitta motivation, if the teacher is trying to gather, as an idea of gathering a bunch of disciples and becoming famous, that also won't do. So it's important that everybody together is unified with the same intention and is working towards the same aim. And so although that aim may take time to actually understand and to build up in our mind, still we can understand something, we can generate a contrived motivation that is based on at least admiration for the goal. And so let's all generate the loving, compassionate heart of bodhicitta that's aimed at full awakening so that we can actualize the intentions of love and compassion towards all beings. So when we were walking up here this morning, I asked Christina if she had done the meditations from yesterday, and she responded with an enthusiastic yes, and commented that they had helped her with her attachment. And usually the meditations on reducing anger and the meditations on love are done to oppose anger and animosity, not for attachment. But I commented to her that, when you meditate on love, it also, when you have some feeling for that attitude, and then you compare that with the feeling you have when you're attached to somebody, then you can really see the difference between the two of them. Yeah, it becomes quite clear, because attachment is sticky. Yeah. Yeah, and there's expectations involved, there's possessiveness involved. This person is mine, this person makes me happy, they are always going to be like this. And that kind of attitude and story about somebody is very different than when we talked about love yesterday, and love is just wanting someone to have happiness and its causes, wanting them to be well, to be free of affliction, free of anxiety, and that feeling is so different than when we're wanting to possess somebody or control them or make them ours or whatever it is. Yeah. So I just thought I'd point that out. So, so that we make sure that when we're meditating on love, that we don't slip into attachment. And that's why the instructions were don't start with somebody that is a dear one already, because if you start with somebody you're attached to and then you start wishing them well, it just often deepens the attachment, which doesn't really help you spiritually. Okay. So, sometimes people think, but if I give up attachment, then I'm like a bump on a log. I don't feel anything for anybody, and I'm never going to have any happiness. because in the world, attachment is seen as something good. Yeah. And it's seen as, what's going to bring you happiness and bring you worth in your life. But, and so what we call attachment, the world calls love, but they're actually quite different, And often in our relationships, especially at the beginning, there's kind of a mixture of attachment and love. Yeah. But then as we practice more and more, it switches and becomes more love and less clinging, less attachment. Yeah. Because with attachment, we're looking to others to satisfy our needs, and that's their job description. Yeah. Your job description is, you must satisfy my needs, especially my emotional needs, but physical ones too, and financial ones, and everything, But love doesn't have that job description. Yeah. There's no job description. It's just a feeling of kindness and wishing people well, simply because they exist, not because they do something for us. It's difficult to get rid of the self-centeredness, isn't it? Okay, so we're at the top of page 212, right? Only upon gaining the first jhana, a meditator abides pervading 1/4 with the mind imbued with loving kindness. Likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth. So above, below, around, and everywhere, and to all as to himself, he abides pervading the entire world with a mind imbued with loving kindness, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without malice. Isn't that a beautiful description of showing us the way that we have the potential to feel? Yeah. So this is with the first jhana, so you have very good concentration. So, you think of the east, the west, the north, the south, above, below, the earth, Mars, our solar system, our universe, extending out into infinite space. And everywhere that there's any kind of living beings, whether you know them personally or don't, there's this feeling of goodwill. Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah? Wouldn't that be nice to just feel as your spontaneous attitude? Okay? And so that love pervades the entire world with a mind. Okay, so he pervades the entire world with a mind imbued with loving kindness. And that loving kindness is abundant. There's not a feeling of poverty. Like, if I give it to somebody else, if I give it to love, if I love this person, then I can't love that person too. Yeah. Or if I give love to this person, are they going to love me back? So there's not this feeling of lack or scarcity in either the love we give to others or in what they return, because we're not looking so much for what they return. Our delight, or the feeling of abundance, comes simply from our giving the goodwill and giving the love. Okay? So, so often we have this feeling of poverty, not only about material things, but emotional things too. If somebody else cares for this person, then they don't care for me. Yeah. If somebody gives attention to this person and not to me, then I'm left out, I'm inferior, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. So this is something I really see in, in working with His Holiness, is that in His Holiness's love and compassion, there's room for everybody to be there. And it's not like if He gives attention to one person, that you're missing out or you're excluded. It's not like that at all. So even though you're not, we're not in daily touch with Him, and maybe He knows or doesn't know our name or whatever, still that there's that feeling of friendliness and goodwill being extended, and we can rely on that. Even if when He has decisions, He talks to a certain group of people and He doesn't consult us, or whoever it is. Okay, so there's this feeling of really the abundance of somebody's love, and also in our mind being able to receive other people's love without a feeling of scarcity, that if they show attention or affection to one person, that then we're being left out. Yeah, but we so often fall into that, don't we? Yeah. Oh, you said good morning to so-and-so. You didn't say good morning to me. Yeah. You smiled at so-and-so. You didn't smile at me. So this is all the machinations of our mind. It's not the reality of the situation. It's the machinations of our self-centered mind that causes us so much incredible suffering. And that's how all this jealousy comes about. Because I think I've told you before, about my competition and jealousy with other disciples of my teacher, because they got to be in the room at 4:00 in the morning and do puja with them, with him, and I was relegated to leading a course. That's how I saw it at the time. I didn't realize that actually he was trusting me with something very important. I saw it as I was missing out on his attention. Poor me, sniff, sniff. Okay. And, she began to see how the mind creates these false stories where we exclude ourselves. Yeah, we exclude ourselves. Yeah, because I'm sure on the parts of my teachers, there wasn't that exclusion. Yeah, it was me. So it's interesting, when it talks about abundance, to really clue into the abundance of giving love and the abundance of receiving it too. Okay, exalted, immeasurable. So it doesn't have limits. It doesn't have bounds. It isn't, when we generate love towards others, like, okay, I gave you some attention yesterday. I gave you some love yesterday. Give me a break today, okay? So there's not this thing of, and it's an ability to love without being affected by other people's attachment and other people's demands and other people's needs and so on, because we have to differentiate between love and codependence too. There's all these things that we have to really investigate when thinking about love, because often we think love is, if we love somebody, then we do whatever they want and we do whatever helps them and whatever seems to help them immediately, and that's not true. Yeah, because that's what codependence does. Somebody has a substance abuse problem, and we cover up for them in the name of love. Yeah, there's a situation of domestic abuse, and we cover up for the abuser by saying we have love and compassion for them. And in that way, the situation never gets resolved. The person never gets the help they need. But we're doing that in the name of love. And that's not love, that's codependence. Are you seeing the difference? Yeah, can you see the difference? And see examples in our own lives? And that is also what's going on when we're people pleasing. Yeah. Oh, now all the people pleasers are shaking in their boots. But, that's what we're doing when we're people pleasing. It's not a genuine affection and care for somebody, but it's, giving so that they think well of me and they think good of me and I'm not excluded and they don't like me. Yeah. So, but it's not genuine love towards others. It's pleasing them so that we get something out of it. And in that way, protect our own reputation and our own, how we think of ourselves. So what I'm getting at, in thinking about these adjectives describing love, is that we have to really go deep in our meditation and really figure out what it means to love somebody, and what it means to love many buddies, yeah? And what it means to receive love, but without a feeling of obligation. Yeah, because I talk to some people and they say that it's so difficult for them to receive love or to receive another person's generosity. Somebody tries to give them something and be generous, but they instantly recoil because in their mind that means they're obliged to the other person afterwards. Yeah, somebody gave me a present, somebody was kind to me, now I have obligation, now I'm burdened, now I have to repay it. Ugh, how awful. So better don't give me anything because I don't want to feel obliged. As if the gift came with, IOU. Yeah, with an IOU attached to it. Okay. Yeah, but really being able to receive somebody's gift. And even if they're giving it with an IOU, it doesn't mean we have to accept the IOU part of it. Yeah. And they may get mad at us. Yeah. I gave you such this nice gift and look how you're treating me. Yeah. Then, something's kind of broken in that, isn't it? Then it wasn't really a gift. So that's why, like at the Abbey, we don't have levels of members and levels of benefactors, and we don't assign seats according to how much somebody has donated to the Abbey, and we don't have levels of sponsors for different things. But yeah, we're grateful for whatever people give. And that's much better. And we see that it works out. Yeah, I don't think people are complaining that we don't pay enough attention to them. I gave you a big donation and I'm not sitting in the front row. It's like people have adjusted to that and they know that's the way we do things. So, Okay. So to gain this further development of love, extend love to one direction, the east, so that it pervades all sentient beings there. When doing this, begin small, thinking of one dwelling and the people that are in it, okay? So east is that way. Actually, more that way. Yeah. And extending love to everybody there. Then extend love to two dwellings and gradually to the town, the state, and so forth in one direction. Yeah, when that meditation is firm, then gradually add beings in the other three cardinal directions. Yeah, the four intermediate directions, northeast, northwest, southwest, southeast, and up and down, radiating love in all of those directions. So when they talk about the 10 directions, that's what they are. Okay. Then, so after you've done that, yeah, then extend love everywhere without specifying a particular direction. Or a particular realm of existence, social status, race, ethnicity, religion, gender, and so on. Or religion. It does have religion. Okay, unmarred by negative feelings. So in other words, extending love to everybody, regardless of the superficial appearances of them, their socioeconomic class, the country that they grew up in, all these kinds of things, their political ideas, disregarding all of that stuff, but just connecting with them as human beings. Unmarred by negative feelings of grief or suffering, this immeasurable love is pure, impartial, and unconditional. Yeah, so we don't have a list of rules or conditions that the people we extend love to have to follow. Yeah. Difficult, but this is so valuable. Yeah, this is so valuable. Together with extending the range of your love, intensify it by remembering that in our beginningless rebirth, we have all been each other's mothers. This helps to break down feelings of separateness and open our hearts to love all beings as if they were our children. The Metta Sutra says, as a mother would, with all her life, protect her only child, so one should develop a boundless heart towards all beings. So that's using the worldly example of a mother's feeling towards her child. And I think especially when the child is a baby, when the child is very helpless, then the mothers and fathers too, just do everything for the kid. And they're not expecting anything back because they know it's a baby. And, babies cry and pee and poo, and that's about, once in a while they'll smile, but that's about all you're going to get from a baby, from your kindness. So you just give unconditionally because you care about them. When the child gets older, that's when parental love becomes much more conditional and having many more expectations. And that's why, there's often a lot of problems that follow because there's check sheets on the side of the parent and check sheets on the side of the children for what they expect of each other. But, especially in infancy, those things aren't there. And so that idea of, just how mothers take care of their kids. And at Kopan in the early days, there was one family there from Denmark. No, he was American, she was Danish, and they had two little kids. And Lama Yeshe asked her to come and speak to everybody about how a mother feels towards a child. Yeah. Because most of us, didn't have kids, and we were all had the usual American or Western disgruntledness with our parents. Yeah. And it was so amazing to hear how she spoke about her kids. And I checked with many other mothers afterwards if this was true, but mothers do not see their kids pee and poo as dirty and disgusting. Yeah, when they change our diapers, they, there's not that feeling of, bleh, the way many of us would feel if we had to change somebody's diapers. Yeah, so it's just kind of incredible, that feeling. And Lama Zopa sometimes would talk about it, how it is in the Solokhumbu area of Tibet, because they didn't have Gerber's baby food there that you could go and buy at the store. So the mothers would chew the food and then spit it out and give it to the baby so that the baby had already chewed, mashed up food to eat. Yeah. I thought, wow, that's amazing. So, to think that there's that kind of way of relating to others and that we can have that feeling and extend it to everybody, even the cockroaches, the stink bugs. Yeah, who else? Our favorite people. Yeah. But to really, that idea of the love being unconditioned. As a father, yeah? Do you want to say something about that?
Not so much about being a father, but as being a child taking care of their aged parents. And same, we always talk about the mother and children. Of course, there are a lot of fathers that do the same thing these days, at least. But it strikes me that same thing happens for adult children taking care of their parents.
Yeah.
And going through exactly the same type of changing, cleaning up, etc.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing sometimes to see the dedication that adult children have towards their parents. One of our friends has been with her mother for how long? 2 years? Yeah, and her mother just died, but, with such love, and giving up her own life to take care of her mother in her aged years. Yeah. And I saw that with my sister taking care of my dad, changing his diapers and everything. He wouldn't let me come anyway. I couldn't even help him out of a car. He didn't want any help from me. But, he would accept it from my sister. And she cared for him like that. Kind of amazing. Of course, she was a mother, but I wasn't. So I had no practice, I just care for cats. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So practicing love as a divine abode entails practicing it at all times when you are awake and in all postures, sitting, standing, lying down, and walking. As meditation continues, the second and third jhanas in the fourfold schema will be gained. In the early stages of cultivating love, thought and imagination are necessary. But once love is aroused and becomes strong and stable, these are unnecessary. The mind becomes absorbed in the experience of love, and radiating love takes on a momentum of its own. So you don't need to think about somebody's good qualities or, like that. It's just, it becomes more and more natural because it's integrated through familiarity in our own lives. The liberation of mind by love is practiced with universal pervasion by extending it to all beings. Okay, then all breathing things all creatures, all persons, and all those with a personality. While these 5 terms are synonymous, meditating on them individually gives us different perspectives on the object of our love. So when you think all beings, that might be different than when you think all breathing things. Yeah, which may be different when you think of all creatures, or all persons, or all those with a personality. Okay, even though those 5 are synonymous, they include the same sentient beings, but thinking about them according to those different labels is different. So the liberation of mind by love is practiced with specific privation by extending love. Okay, so that was the 5 unspecific or unspecified thing of universal privation. Then another way to do it is with 5 specific privations by extending love. And here there's 7 groups. Okay, women, men, Aryas, ordinary beings, devas, human beings, and those born in unfortunate realms. Okay, so that will give you all those together, include all beings, all breathing things, and so on. But going through each realm of existence and thinking of the beings there really expands our love, and it forces us to overcome bias and prejudice and fear that we may have of certain living beings. One of my friends in India, he lived there for many years, and in India you have some very interesting spiders, usually there's some pretty big ones. Yeah, not like the tarantulas we had in California where I grew up, but not like the itty-bitty ones that we have there. India has some really good size, yucky-looking spiders. And and you always have them in your room. They come in, they go out, whatever. And so he had this aversion for spiders. And then his uncle died, and one day he noticed one of the big spiders, up in his room on the ceiling, and the thought occurred, that could be my uncle, the rebirth of my uncle, and that completely changed how he related to spiders. Yeah, because thinking that this is the continuation of my uncle, who he was so fond of, then he couldn't hold that same fear and animosity towards a spider. Yeah. So it's interesting, to think of that, and especially if we think deeply that in previous lives, we've had these very close, loving, intimate relationships with everybody. Yeah. Then, and remembering that, then if we see them this lifetime in a different situation, in a different body, but we remember that they're a continuum of, the mind stream of the person that we were so close to in the past, then that helps us, feel more open and receptive and kind to that person. Okay? So that's the benefit of really thinking that, we've had previous lives and we've had all these kinds of relationships with different people in previous lives. Yeah. Again, if you really have a belief in rebirth, that can really help your mind in stopping the bias and prejudice, because then instead of seeing just the outward appearance of a sentient being in this lifetime, you're seeing, the continuation of the fundamental innate mind of clear light, which has, doesn't have a body and a gender and a race and a political view or anything like that. Okay, and that helps us, really include others in our love. And it helps us overcome fear of them too. Yeah, if you look at somebody, and your mind, like maybe there's somebody who's very big. And I had one friend who was very tall, very big man. And he mentioned once to me that he turned the corner when he was walking down the hallway and somebody went like this, and then he realized, oh, just because I'm so big, then sometimes, people react with that kind of fear or startledness or whatever. So, and I think of the guys in prison, and there your size is a really big thing, and you're very much afraid of people who are bigger than you, because if a fight occurs, you're disadvantaged. But if you look, and you don't look at that person's superficial thing of what size they are or what how strong they are physically, whatever. But you look into their heart and you see a sentient being who wants happiness and not suffering, then you're going to respond to that person in a very different way, instead of with fear, with some kind of love or friendliness or understanding. Yeah. And that might take the person completely by surprise. Yeah, especially if somebody's trying to intimidate you, and you respond to them friendly and joking and like that, then it kind of, they can't continue with their act. Okay. The liberation of mind by love is cultivated to pervade the 10 directions in 10 ways. By thinking as above towards all beings in the 10 directions, and then thinking of the 12 types of beings, the 5 unspecific and the 7 specific in each of the directions. In addition, each of the phrases in the formula, be free from hostility, be free from affliction, be free from anxiety, and live happiness, is one meditative absorption in itself. So when you combine all of these, the 5 unspecified, the 5 specified, and then all these different wishes, and you do a meditative absorption on each one individually, then it becomes quite rich and quite big. The Buddha said that practitioners of the liberation of love through love will experience 11 benefits. So here there's 11 benefits. Nagarjuna in Precious Garland mentions 8 benefits, but they overlap with these 11. So one is you sleep well. It's true. If you have a loving mind, you sleep well. You're not afraid. You don't have remorse. You awake happy. Yeah. You don't have bad dreams. Yeah. Because you have an attitude of kindness. So no bad dreams. You are pleasing to human beings. You are pleasing to spirits. Deities will protect you. Fire, poison, and weapons do not injure you. Yeah, for that, I think you really have to have, the jhanas for that one to work. Your mind quickly becomes concentrated. Your facial complexion is serene. Yeah, I mean, people with loving kindness have a kind face. People who are angry, their face is, you can look at somebody's face and tell when they're angry. You die unconfused. That's a big benefit, isn't it? Yeah. You die and you have no regrets towards anybody because you've treated everybody well with kindness. You have no unfinished business with people because you've accepted how they've treated you. Yeah, so you're not confused at the time of death. And when you don't have scary appearances, karmic appearances. And even if you did, you would respond to them with kindness instead of with fear or whatever. And if you do not penetrate further, you fare on to the Brahma world. Okay, so if you don't go into love if you don't keep practicing with renunciation, then you're reborn in the Brahma world. Using the liberation of mind by love as the basis for developing insight, you can attain arhatship. This is done by meditating in a jhana. So meditation on love alone is not sufficient to attain liberation or awakening, okay, because it lacks the wisdom aspect. Here is how in the Pali tradition you include the wisdom aspect. Okay, so this is done by meditating on love in a jhana, then leaving the jhana state and analyzing its components. Yeah, so you leave it, you're no longer in the jhana, but you look at the jhana and you see, it's impermanent. It's the nature of dukkha because it's not free of samsara. There's no self there who's meditating. Yeah. So through doing this, you see that even this blissful state of concentration is impermanent, unsatisfactory, and selfless. Such insight into the three characteristics will lead to the realization of nirvana and the eradication of all fetters. So from the Pali viewpoint, what you're trying to do is gain this insight into impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and no self. And that's considered a worldly meditation because you're in their tradition, because you're analyzing the aggregates, which are polluted phenomena. But then once you have that realization of the three characteristics, as you keep meditating, then there's a breakthrough and you perceive nirvana directly. And that's a transcendental wisdom that realizes nirvana. Okay. But I find that quite interesting, that and it's a good way for us to practice too, that you meditate and then when you come out of your meditation, you look and you see it's impermanent. Yeah, you're still under the control of afflictions and karma, so don't, get arrogant about anything. And, there's no findable self that's doing the meditation, and there's no findable inherently existent meditation either.
Maybe I'm not understanding this right, but I don't understand why serenity comes before the first jhana. Why do you need even the jhanas to do all this? Why couldn't you just use serenity?
You can use serenity to realize the three characteristics, but the jhanas are a much deeper state of concentration. And so the deeper you're able to go into concentration to a certain extent, then the more you're able to integrate what you're meditating on with your very being. Okay. But in the Pali tradition, not everybody who attains arhatship attains the jhanas or the formless absorptions, because you can do that just with serenity alone.
Dry arhat.
Yeah, those are the dry, wizened arhats, because they aren't moistened by the effect of concentration.
Trying to match this up in my mind, this description of this being a worldly realization because it's polluted.
Yeah.
And matching it up with tenets. So, you know how in the Sutra school they say that you explicitly realize the aggregates lack a
You
self.
explicitly realize the aggregates, and you implicitly realize that there's
But that
no
happens
self.
simultaneously, and this sounds like it's a sequence. I'm just wondering if they're similar or if this is just a, like where does the Pali match up with Sutra School and Great Exposition School?
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's where you just have to really understand both systems and see whether they match up or whether they don't. And there's a lot of difference. I've never heard about this thing of a breakthrough to nirvana when studying in the lower tenon systems. Yeah, but here they talk about it quite specifically in the Pali tradition. And I was talking with Geshe-la about it the other day, and it's almost as if nirvana is emptiness, because they see nirvana as this transcendental thing that is, always present. So nirvana is something you realize, not just something you attain. So in that regard, it sounds like nirvana is very close to emptiness. It's there, and in your meditation you realize it. It's difficult trying to match up the tenet systems and the Pali tradition. Doesn't always work. Just as I think matching up what we learn about Chittamadra with the Chittamadrans in China, that's not going to be a one-to-one match either.
Could you then say that nirvana is realizing emptiness, like the state of...
According to which school? Who are you talking about? Yeah. See, the nirvana actually in both traditions is talked about in two ways. In one way, it's the abandonment of ignorance, anger, and attachment. It's the abandonment of the afflictions. Okay? So in one way, you talk about nirvana, and it's the cessation of something that did exist, because the afflictions did exist. In another way, both traditions have their own ways, not exactly the same way, but similar in some ways, of seeing nirvana in a second way, which is that it's the nature of reality. Okay, so there's multiple ways to use the word nirvana and what it means. Mm-hmm. Just don't go by perfume, okay? Okay, we're moving on to compassion now. Similar to meditation on love, the cultivation of compassion begins with contemplating the disadvantages of lacking compassion and the benefits of having it. So this is something that His Holiness goes into in great depth, the disadvantages of lacking compassion, the benefits of having it. And he so often does this, not just on a personal level, but on a global level, and on the interrelationship between societies, and how richer countries not caring about poorer countries, richer countries that have a lot of natural resources, not caring about the ones that don't. Even within a society, the growing gap between the wealthy and the impoverished, the bigotry and partiality and stuff that we've been seeing in this country. So he talks about all of that as, this is the disadvantage of lacking compassion, as you wind up living in that kind of world where people don't care about each other and they're basically looking out for themselves. You see how our attitude that we're cultivating in our spiritual practice has got to influence every aspect of our life. We can't just, have compassion on our meditation seats, and then when it comes to, benefiting society, just think of ourselves and, and our own pocketbook. Okay. Yeah, so His Holiness talks a lot about this on the global level. And he does so in a way that doesn't make people angry at each other. Yeah, it's just kind of amazing, isn't it? The first person you cultivate compassion for should be someone in great suffering. You may or may not know him personally, although compassion will arise more strongly by directly seeing the person. If you do not encounter an appropriate person, you can cultivate compassion for someone creating horrendous, destructive karma, even if he appears happy at the moment. Do this by comparing him to someone given delicious food just before being executed. Because that's what it's like, if you're creating a lot of negative karma. After generating compassion for a suffering person, do so for a dear person, followed by a neutral person, and finally an enemy. Should you feel anger towards the enemy, counteract it through the methods described above. If any of these people are not experiencing gross suffering at the moment, cultivate compassion by recalling that they are still under the control of afflictions and karma, and therefore are not free of the suffering of pervasive conditioning. Then break down the barriers between the four kinds of people: ourselves, dear ones, neutral people, and enemies, until the counterpart sign appears and access concentration is attained. By repeatedly meditating on that sign, you attain the first three jhanas. Such concentration enables your mind to be pliant and versatile so that you can meditate on compassion for all sentient beings in all the directions as described in the meditation on love. The 11th advantage, as detailed above, also accrues, and that 11th of advantages that you will be born in the Brahma world. When viewing others suffering and cultivating compassion, if you become overwhelmed by feelings of despair or helplessness, you have missed the mark. So this is important. Okay. Distress about others' suffering, anger at societal forces that cause suffering, or frustration with others for getting themselves into predicaments may be natural emotions for ordinary beings, but they are far from the Buddhist meaning of compassion. Compassion is the wish for others to be free of suffering, and to cultivate it, we must remain focused on responding with tender concern and the wish to help. Okay, so here he's pointing out some ways that we can go off, stray away from actual compassion. One is just feeling overwhelmed by others' suffering. It's just too much. I can't handle it. I can't bear it. And so that is distress at others' suffering. And that renders us unable to help. Because you're so upset about somebody else's suffering that you can't help them. You're completely overwhelmed by your own emotions. And I saw this one time a few years ago. I went when a friend of ours was passing away. The same guy who was very tall, and when he was dying, and his wife was there, his two children, and his best friend. And both his wife and his best friend were Buddhist practitioners. But it was a situation where he wasn't going to get better, and he was just staying on life support. So they brought him up to enough consciousness and told him the situation and said, do you want us to stop the life support or do you want us to continue it? And he wanted them to stop the life support. So the five of us were there when, and then they stopped the life support. And I realized, his wife, his two kids, and his best friend were totally overwhelmed with grief. They couldn't handle the situation because of their attachment to him. And so I was the one who was able to stand there because, we had been good friends, but there wasn't that kind of attachment, and give him some kind of direction as he was dying, what to think about, what to do. But it became very apparent to me that when we feel overwhelmed by somebody's suffering, then it becomes very difficult to really benefit them when they need it. Yeah, because we're immobilized. So then anger at societal forces that cause suffering. Again, sometimes, we can see the suffering world and we just get so angry at, political institutions, governmental policies, the stupidity of people in power, and, that because of all of this, then there's so much suffering. Because, for example, there is enough food in the world to feed people, but it just can't get to the people who are hungry. Because of wars, because of corruption, because of stinginess on the parts of some governments, so there's so much that can be done. Same with climate change. Syria now joined the Paris Pact. Our country is the only country now that doesn't. It's like, And whereas most people in this country do believe in climate change, it's so easy to get furious at those societal forces. And then you're just angry, and maybe you go out and you scream, and protest. But when it comes to doing something, you can't do anything, because the anger's too strong. So, the anger has to be subdued in order to think of, like, what are policies that are going to work, and how do you go about convincing people that these policies are going to work, and how do you go about implementing these? And this takes a lot more time and a lot more energy than just being angry. Yeah, which is why it's often so difficult for people who are fighting for independence to then take over positions of government, because they're so used to being angry and having a vent for that. And then you have to use your mind in a totally different way when you actually have the power. Yeah. So you see that, like the Palestinian PLO. Yeah, I was going to say PLA, but that's the People's Liberation Army. That's Chinese PLO. So they had difficulty when they finally had power. Of how do you set up a government, and how do you govern and get all these people together and help them overcome their anger so that they can work together and implement policies. And that's a whole lot more difficult than just being enraged, and fighting. Okay. Or the frustration with others for getting themselves into predicaments. Okay, so I mentioned this yesterday. We see people, we give them good advice and then they do the opposite. Wouldn't you know it? They get themselves into a problem, they're suffering, and then we're like, I told you so, you jerk. If you'd only listened to me and hadn't done that, you wouldn't be so suffering now. So we get angry at them. That also useless. Okay, that's not compassion. That's anger. Okay. Okay, so we finished compassion. So a lot of what was talked about in love, we apply to compassion in terms of overcoming hatred, breaking down the barriers, sharing compassion with all the different kinds of people in the different directions and so on. Yeah. Then joy. Empathetic joy rejoices at success, good qualities, and happiness. And it should say virtue too. Cultivate joy first for a dear person who is good-natured and happy, and whose happiness and success merits rejoicings. Are you noticing that in each of these we start with a different person? With love, we start with somebody we respect. Compassion, somebody with great suffering. Joy, somebody who's doing well. We'll see what's up for equanimity. So, we have to see it's cultivated differently, starting with different people. Actually, with love, we started with ourselves, didn't we? Okay. So if the person has had success in the past, or you expect she will in the future, rejoice about that too. Having generated joy for this dear person, cultivate joy for a neutral person and then an enemy. Yeah, sometimes joy for the enemy is so difficult. The enemy has some success. Oh, we are burning. We can't stand that. Yeah. Or the enemy gets some societal recognition. Ooh. Or they get the promotion. They get the, the praise or something. Oh, we don't want to rejoice. We are jealous and angry. Okay, so we have to overcome that. Okay, the meaning of subduing anger for the enemy, breaking down the barriers, cultivating and repeatedly practicing the sign, increasing the absorption up to the third jhana, cultivating versatility and reaping the benefits are as explained above. Okay, so that's all the same. Then equanimity. Having become familiar with the third jhana on love, compassion, and joy, emerge from it and contemplate the risks of the previous three immeasurables and the benefits of equanimity. The preceding three immeasurables are risky because attachment and anger are not far away. For example, while developing love, attachment could arise instead. Also, the previous three immeasurables are associated with happiness, which decreases the depth of concentration. Okay, because happiness adds this quality of like excitement or restlessness or giddiness. The mind isn't completely smooth. Okay, thus seek equanimity, a constancy or steadiness of mind. With equanimity, we are free from longing and aversion from others. We accept happiness and suffering by understanding that they arise due to karma created by that person. This equanimity is not indifference, for meditators have already gained jhana on love, compassion, and joy. Okay, so that's a big thing to realize. This equanimity is not indifference, because you've already cultivated love, compassion, and joy. Yeah. While equanimity remains peaceful and receptive, the three previous immeasurables imbue it with a calm affection for sentient beings and balanced involvement with them. So there's still the calm affection, the openness, the receptivity, the caring for them. So it's not an equanimity that is indifference or apathy. It's still involved. Having contemplated love, compassion, and joy, focus on a neutral person and cultivate equanimity. So we start with a neutral person here. When this is stable, meditate on equanimity towards a dear one, followed by equanimity towards an enemy. Breaking down the barriers and cultivating and repeatedly practicing the sign are as above. Through this, you will enter the fourth jhana. Only after attaining the first, second, and third jhanas on love, compassion, and joy can you attain the fourth jhana on equanimity. Okay, so you don't go into the fourth jhana directly on equanimity here. Your practice will expand by being versatile in the levels of jhana you enter and in the range of positive emotions you experience. This affects your ability to reach out and benefit others in your daily life. Okay, so again, this is why reaching the deeper levels of jhana is important, because it helps you become more versatile, and versatility helps you attain those deeper levels. Even after attaining awakening, the Buddha continued to meditate on all four immeasurables. He was a loving, compassionate, and joyful individual whose evenness of mind enabled him to be effective in diverse situations with a variety of people. So that's the benefit of equanimity. Buddhaghosa compares the sequential cultivation of the four immeasurables with the changing attitude parents have towards their children. Okay, so this is another way of understanding what the four immeasurables are in your life. When the baby is in the womb, the parents think with a loving mind, when will we see our child healthy? Yeah, because that's what you care for when you can't see the baby. You want a healthy child. After he or she is born, when the adorable baby lies on their back and cries because they had a bad dream, the parents feel compassion, even if it's the middle of the night. When the child grows up and the parents see him playing and learning, they feel joy at their child's happiness. When the child is grown and becomes a responsible adult in his own right, the parents have equanimity, knowing he can take care of himself. This analogy shows the usefulness of each attitude in specific situations. Okay, so again, I think that's important when the situation is such, that a person is young and experienced, then you give them more love. Yeah. When somebody has misery, you give them more compassion. When somebody is doing well, you rejoice. And when somebody can take care of themselves, you leave them alone. You're not a helicopter parent, or a helicopter, whatever it is, friend. Okay, so, but leaving them alone isn't, I'm just going to leave you alone. It's because you trust them and you know that they are wise and can make good decisions and they don't need so much attention.
One thing I find confusing about this presentation is that it seems like with the words that were given in meditating on love, it also includes compassion, and perhaps you could even say joy, wishing them to be free of anxiety. So it seems like the beginning practice is different. You're meditating on different benefits and different disadvantages. But then I wonder, would the words be different, or would they be the same for the different?
I think the words would be different. when you're cultivating compassion. But I mean, they gave us the phrase for love, but I think the one for compassion you would emphasize. I mean, you would still say, may they be free of illness, may they be free of anxiety and affliction. Yeah. And for joy, you would probably emphasize, may they succeed in their endeavors, may they create, lots of virtue. So, you would probably change the phrase that you were reciting a bit. But there is a lot of overlap. I mean, because it's hard to wish somebody to be free of suffering if you don't wish them happiness too. Yeah? It's not just, I have compassion and I want to see you free of suffering, but after that, I don't care if you're happy or not. Somehow, intellectually, we can say that they're two different things, but on a gut level, I don't know if you could, could you really sit there and say, oh, I have compassion for your suffering and I want to help you eliminate your suffering, but I don't care whether you're happy or not. On a gut level, that doesn't work for me anyway. On an intellectual level, it works. Yeah. So I would think that you would alter the phrase you're saying, but probably, keep on with the phrases you were saying before.
So we heard yesterday that people should be alive because we don't know what form they'll be in their next life, but why wouldn't they still be worthy of our meditation on love for them?
Oh, they are, but then that would come when we meditate on beings in the different realms of existence. Okay, because we don't know what realm they're born in, but when we're expanding the love, we think, to different realms of existence, then we could think of people who we knew when they were alive as human beings, being born in those different realms.
The other night, we're still going through chapter 7 and working with anger, which is a lot of techniques.
Uh-huh.
And then a long-time person there at UU just erupted in rage, and she was responding to someone else's comment about having to deal with sexist remarks her whole life, and she just went on and on about how we have to be so angry as women and we have to stand up and address this. And this is like 2.5 years after the compassion book, and I thought, yeah, this takes a long time.
Yeah, it does. Because I think people misunderstand and they think anger is the only thing that can motivate you to overcome sexism and prejudice and bigotry. Yeah, they don't yet understand the force of compassion to do those.
I think it's like what Robert F. Kennedy said when he announced the death of Martin Luther King. We could further the divide by showing anger towards one another and resorting to violence, or we could unify by showing love towards one another. My brother was killed by a white man too, but I don't harbor any anger or aggression about it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very good.
With joy for the bad person. Because where you have to find some sort of crack in the pillar that holds them up in order to try and sneak some joy in. And you can't be joyful for their accomplishments if their accomplishments are evil. So how do you do that?
Right. So you're not, if their accomplishments are harmful to a vast number of people, you don't rejoice that they're successful. We don't rejoice in Stalin and Hitler and Mao, okay? Yeah. But everybody is not 100% negative. Everybody has some good qualities. And what often happens with people is we see their negative qualities and we build an image of them that is very limited, as if they are inherently only their negative qualities and they never, ever, ever, ever act with kindness towards anybody whatsoever. And that's not true. Yeah. So we have to also realize that everybody has kindness in them.
My question really is, how do you find that kindness?
Kindness, you try and imagine them in different situations. You know, you imagine Stalin when he went home to his family. Yeah. And I see, I've talked to people whose parents were SS soldiers, and they said, my parents were so loving to me, and I can't put it together with them being SS soldiers. So you see, people aren't all one or all the other. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is challenging our very rigid way of classifying and thinking of people.